Voice of God weapons. I have been warning you about them since the inception of this channel, since the very beginning. That's basically what this channel was based on. And the surveillance system that Voice of God weapons operate under, which is basically like an umbrella that comes down over a landscape. I have many, many videos on this, but this is a special story I want to tell you about today. Now, to tell you that, we need to go back. I've released many videos on this, and I will link to some of those videos below in the pinned comment. One of those videos is the God Op goes full 21st century warfare. And what that goes into is all these people who suddenly start believing that God is talking to them. They're all over YouTube. They're all over everywhere. We know that pre-2010, God didn't talk to people. And Christians would tell you, God doesn't talk to people. Now they're subverting Christianity and tricking people into believing that God does talk to you verbally. So you have all these people that are kind of mixing what they used to call, this is them, not me, but what they used to call witchcraft. So they would say, you know, this is necromancy, or this is some type of sorcery, or they would call it clairvoyance or telepathy. It was a bad thing. That's what Christians used to say. But now that Christianity is being completely subverted, they're saying it's a good thing. Like this guy right here says that somebody is talking to God, right? And they got the 6 names of witches. Now, that's really weird, because wouldn't you have to use witchcraft to get those names, right? Let's listen to what he says here.
We got first and last names of 6 witches that are in our church. And you know what's strange? 3 of you are in this room right now. In the name of Jesus Christ, we break your spells, we break your curse.
So he was having someone talk to God, and they got the names of witches that went to their church. Now, just a couple months ago, I did a story that I released called Glenn, A Story of Modern Mind Control, where I told a story of a guy who is tricked into believing that his cousin is something that he isn't, and ends up killing him to take care of that problem that he thought was a problem that wasn't a problem, because he was hearing Voice of God weapons. That is the same thing that is happening to these people at this church. They are being told that they got the names of 6 witches through witchcraft. Very odd, right? Do you see how dangerous this is? It's a weapon, and they have been using it for decades and decades, and now they have it polished. There's no more testing. It is a weapon. It is also a surveillance system. I have a video called The Surveillance System You Don't Know About, and many others that I will link to below. I also have an entire playlist dedicated to it. Now, that playlist is called The SWAT Rat, The Surveillance System You Need to Know About, and there are many videos about it here, and it can be proven it is at work, right? Now, another thing that I need to get into to tell this story is the video that I did on OP Rock. I'm going to link to this video below as well, but this video is all about soldiers that were sent to a specific location called OP Rock. It was in Afghanistan, and they started to see things through their night vision goggles, but it wouldn't have a heat signature. Then they began to hear an attack on them with guns and weapons. You need to understand this to go into the story that I'm going to get into. They blamed it on ghosts later because, right, it has to be mental illness or ghosts. It can't be anything in between. They don't want you to think and really think logically. So OP Rock was all about this attack on these soldiers who were tricked into believing that Voice of God weapons, which can be heard by one person, it can target one person or many people in an area. There are different ways you can use these weapons. It can be used on one person, and it can be used on many. So let's get into this story that I want to go into. I was watching this video on the soft white underbelly, and it was a very interesting interview with a guy named Jimmy, who really wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And he's a good guy. You know, he may not have been the best guy in the stories he tells about when he was younger, but he's a good guy now. He gets it. This is for Jimmy specifically, if he ever sees this. I am not trying to attack you, dude. I know a lot of you guys that were special ops operators. I know a lot of you guys, vets. This is not an attack on you. This is an attack on the trickery, because you would have found what you were looking for either way. They just pinned you down in a way that you're believing something that isn't quite in perspective. And I want to get into this, and I want to get into this story because it is ultra, ultra important. But as we get into this, I want to tell you that the system that Voice of God weapons run under is not a dude hiding in a tree with a frequency gun or something like that. It isn't like that at all. This is an umbrella that is signal based, and it's the same reason why people hear the hum. It is the same reason why people can't get away from it, because it is ELF and signal based, and it bounces off the ionosphere and back down to Earth, and it covers entire vast areas like an umbrella. And once people are sensitized to it, they will begin to hear it. There are many, many videos to learn about that on this channel, how it works, the way it's deployed on people. The most important thing is that it is a surveillance system as well, and that is what it does. It is two-way, just like an internet signal that hits your phone is two-way. It's not magic. It is very simplistic and is based off very, very old technology. You need to see the whole interview on Soft White Underbelly. It was put up like 2 months ago, maybe a month ago. It is Jimmy hellbent on being a Navy SEAL or something like that. You'll find it. I have edited this down to brass tacks, right? He goes through a whole story, and then after he's down and out, he begins to work for John Mcaffe, believe it or not. This is very, very important, and very, very important for everybody to understand John Mcaffe. So who this entails and how it's deployed. It is very, very important to understand this. So he's going to tell a story right here about how he started to work for John Mcaffe.
I ended up going in and guarding him as his bodyguard. I ended up being his right-hand man. He takes me in. I go from this super dark, lowest of my life. A year and a half later, I'm the CEO of John Mcafee's company. I went from his bodyguard to his executive advisor to his lead negotiator to his right-hand man to his son. I'm sitting in his office.
This is where I clipped it down. This is where things take a turn. He is at McAfee's mansion. He's working in an office, and then hears a voice after he had walked down a trail calling out for Jesus, basically, or God. So the dude had an empty spot in him. Okay. Now, you don't think that the FBI and agencies were surveilling McAfee with this technology before this?
And I remember I would walk down this dark path at night, and I was searching for God always too. I was like walking down this dirt path, and I was like, God, like these stars are hanging so low. It was beautiful in Ocracoke, North Carolina, where Blackbeard used to evade the British man of wars in the shallows. That's where my office was, this beautiful cherry wood office, and I had the whole level, the whole deck. What a feel you got. Like, are you there? And I used to say this on this path, and so one night I'm in his office.
This whole area around John's place is being surveilled. Everything is being surveilled anyway, but they're going to take a special interest in where John Mcafee is. That's just the way it is. So he has this experience after walking down this trail. Check this out.
And I'm doing my paperwork up there. I remember I just heard this voice in his office, and it said, get up and get out now. Get out of this house. It's evil. I heard this voice, and I just stand up and I write down on a piece of paper, it's over, it's over. And I just...
Remember, Christians knew this before the year 2000. I know it's been 24 years, but God does not talk to people. Not like this. So the place was under surveillance. They start fucking with his main man, right, who's this guy, who is an very violent, very, very violent ex-SEAL. And this guy freaks out. Check out what happens.
Everything, and I knew it was over. I knew my time was up with McAfee. I was willing to leave everything. He gave me half his gold and silver. It was over here in a big safe. And I just stand up, and I take my shirt off. It's in the dead of winter in North Carolina. And I just run outside. No shoes, nothing.
And he would look like, every time somebody runs into one of these Voice of God crazies, quote-unquote crazies, he's got no clothes on. He's running in the woods. And it's not just voices. Then he starts to hear exactly what I explained on the OP Rock video. What happened to those soldiers on OP Rock? Check this out.
Pistol, and I was scared, and I just ran, and I ran, and I ran into the woods, and I heard gunshots going off. I heard battles going on, like do 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 do, like M60, do 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 do. boom, 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 bombs, grenades.
This is every case that I have ever talked about combined, put together into one case. So he's hearing voices that scare him out of the house. Then he starts hearing shit from battle. This was designed originally as a military weapon for people to hear voices or sounds, troop movements, as Woody Norris put it.
So again, this idea of being able to put sound anywhere you want to is really starting to catch on. We've got the military had just deployed some of these into Iraq where you can put fake troop movements a quarter of a mile away on a hillside. Or you can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist some biblical verse. I'm serious.
So let's keep going.
Distance, and I just hid, and I hid, and I could hear I could hear John McAfee's guards searching for me all night, and I just sunk myself in this water, and I can remember this. I remember staying there all night long, and it was the coldest night I've ever had, and I've had freezing cold nights.
This is how it gets people to react. This is how it gets people to comply to what they want them to do. Now imagine if he thought that John McAfee was actually going to hurt him, being an ex-Navy SEAL, he would have went after John McAfee because he would have thought it was his life or death. But that's not the way they were playing it here. They were playing him a different way. We're going to get into that. So they are surveilling John McAfee and all his people with this system at his mansion. They scare this guy out of his office, scare him down a trail, and he's hiding in muck. And after hearing battle sounds running through the woods, and here we go, let's keep going.
Seals, like absolutely freezing, and I don't know how I didn't like pass away in this marsh because I'm so cold. I'm just like just shaking so bad the whole night. Super hypothermic, and in the morning I see this beautiful pelican sitting next to me, and the sun comes up, and I'm like, and I come to, and I realize like there's no enemy chasing me. There's no firefight out there.
So it wasn't going on. He realizes that, but the trick is a long play. It's not a short play trick. You know, when they convince somebody that their neighbor or Joe Blow with a name is coming to kill them, like the mind control story I told a couple months ago, I will link to that below. This is a long play. Let's let it keep going.
There's no guns and stuff going on. And so, oh man, I gotta do this walk of shame back to McAfee's house, back to the mansion, and all the guards are there, my wife is there, and I just come back and I'm just covered in mud and muck, and I'm just covered in filth. I look like the prodigal son coming back from eating pig slop, and all the guards are just looking at me going, dang, Jimmy, what happened? You know, I'm still the CEO of the company, so they're like, hey, boss, what happened, you know? I mean, but they're looking at me like I'm just pure psycho. It was like super embarrassing.
Which is exactly what happens to people who are put under voice of God weapons. They look crazy, and they're touted in the news as crazy. They are shown in the media as crazy. They're shown on YouTube as crazy. And they're not crazy. They are driven to do things, or things that they believe at the time that aren't true, that are happening because of these sounds. That's what drove him out of the house. That's what drove him into the marsh. Now he's coming back.
Because I came to, and I don't know what happened. And so I have a big falling out with McAfee. I leave everything behind. I get in this massive divorce. And then I find out that they arrest McAfee. They arrest John McAfee and put him in a Spanish prison. And then...
So, of course, they were surveilling and checking everything out and fucking with his people before this happened. So, you know, they blew that up between him and McAfee. They got him away. They arrest McAfee. Things are going the way they want, and it's all because of his experience with Voice of God weapons so far. They're breaking up McAfee's foundation so that he felt he had to flee. They were getting him where they wanted him, right? This is the long play.
My parents and my sister tell me that the FBI are looking for me, and I'm getting all these packages sent to my house, and, you know, rule number 1, don't ever answer your mail, right?
This is very edited, like I said before. That's where the FBI was looking for him. Now he's going to go on the run to avoid getting arrested. And he's talking about here about how he was told to cry out to Jesus if he was ever in battle and was bleeding out or dying.
Then just to scream out Jesus. So I scream out at night at 3 a.m. I say, Jesus, Jesus.
Now, he had gone home, and he gets arrested. He gets arrested in Texas, I believe, right, by feds, who arrest him after Mcaffe. Now, listen to this. Very, very important. Very, very important that you understand what is going on here. This is the long play. They wanted to find out his involvement, what he knew, and they were using this system as an information gatherer. They use it everywhere to gather information. Why do you think there's data warehouses everywhere? There are these warehouses in many, many places that are nothing but storage, that are storing this type of data.
Later, I'm pretty distraught. I'm just hanging out in my room. I get a phone call.
So he gets a phone call after he's been arrested and after he's posted bail. And he has a big ankle monitor around him, a federal ankle monitor. He gets contacted by these very, very strange Jesus people, right? Now, this is after he had been calling out to Jesus on the trails before he was scared out of the house by God. This is after he had been crying out for Jesus to come save him. And this was going on before he was even in trouble. He was looking for God, right? And these guys call him up out of nowhere and hook him up. Very strange. Dude, again, if you ever see this, I'm not talking you out of God at all. That's your thing. But people don't talk to God. And God doesn't talk to you, and neither does Jesus. And you can ask any Christian, an old school Christian, and they will tell you this, except for these new guys. So he gets contacted by who? These new guys.
From Operation Restore Warrior, this guy calls me and he goes, Jimmy, you want to come to Operation Restore Warrior? It's for 3 days. I said, man, I'm on house arrest, bro. I got R2-D2 around my ankle right now, an ankle bracelet the size of a Volkswagen that talks to you. And I'm like, I can't go anywhere. He goes, we don't judge you. And I said, let me ask my lawyer, man, because I'll do anything to get out. I didn't know what Operation Restore Warrior was, this nonprofit. I didn't know. I just wanted to get off house arrest for 3 days. And so the Texas judge allows me to go off house arrest into this organization. And they're watching me like a hawk. You know, they wanted to transfer me upstate. So I go to Operation Restore Warrior. This guy, Paul Lavelle, the owner, he's sitting across the table, and he says, Jimmy, are you ready to meet Jesus?
Are you ready to meet Jesus? Isn't that odd that after everything that he said when he thought he was in private, all those lonely nights, suddenly he meets a guy that wants him to meet Jesus? Very interesting. Now, here comes the long play. They are going to verify all the information that they have gathered and tell this guy that it's Jesus talking to these people. Those Christians out there should know that people don't talk to God. And suddenly it's being subverted, and all these people out there are talking to God. Here we go.
And they said, Jimmy, tell us your story. And I'm like, oh, God, not this again. I don't want to tell my story. You guys look like cops. They look like FBI agents. I don't want to talk to you. I don't talk like that.
Affiliated.
And they're like, don't worry, we're not cops. They got their notepads, and I'm like, bullshit, man, bullshit. And they had to literally convince me that they weren't like police, like just because I thought maybe it was a trick. Like, you know, they brought me here.
It was a trick. It just wasn't a trick in the way that he thought. It was a different kind of trick. This is a long play trick to verify and validate information. Watch what happens. And
so I start telling them my story like I kind of right now. And they all of a sudden they said, stop right there, Jimmy. You skipped a very important part of your life. And I said, no, I didn't. And I actually had. And they said, no, stop right there. Tell us about the Love Boat or the Love Shack. And when they said that, there's nobody else in the world that could have known that, but maybe a couple guys around.
You see that? That's how it works. So they're going to convince him that what they are doing, their clairvoyance that is supposed to be shunned by the Bible, right? They're talking to spirits, is Jesus and God that they're talking to. Check this out.
At the time, we nicknamed the Mcaffe house, that big mansion, the Love Shack. And I stopped and I stood up and I said, I'm out. I said, I'm done. This interview's over. And they said,
and that's when he should have been out. You would have, if you were looking for God, dude, or whatever your trip was, man, you would have found him either way. As shitty as that sounds, I realize how hard things must have been for you at the time, but you're being duped here. And I'm not saying that your belief is wrong. I'm saying that how they brought you in is very deceptive. People don't talk to God.
Wait, where are you going, Jimmy? And I said, there's no way you can know that word, Love Shack. That's the nickname I called it. There's no way you could know what we call the house, the Love Boat, but the nickname, I don't know what you're doing here, but I'm out. And they said, Jimmy, calm down. This is what we do. We asked Jesus to come in and do the heavy lifting, and we just kind of parlay what he's saying to us.
So we ask Jesus to do the heavy lifting. Is that just legal speak? You know, is Jesus the name of the system that they're using? Because they have names like Satan, Tammy for certain systems, right? Are they using Jesus in there? Because even the Catholic Church names their telescopes Lucifer. It's very bizarre, but they do. So, yeah, I find this very, very disturbing. And how they trick him in his desperation to find God is very, very concerning. Because they are using the system, and it just says right there that we are trying to validate the information that Jesus gives us. Well, why would you need to validate Jesus' information? If it's coming from Jesus, shouldn't that be the word of God? Why would you question it? Let's let him repeat that.
We just kind of parlay what he's saying to us. And I said, oh, yeah? I said, okay. I said, if you know so much about my life, if you're actually being spoken to by some entity or Jesus, then I want you to tell me. I said, tell me more about this place. If you know so much. They said, and the one guy looked at the other guy, and he basically gave him the okay.
See, what I would have said is, tell me something about when I was a child, which normally the system cannot do. Now, this is going to be not so true for Zoomers. As Zoomers get older, it'll have your whole life on record. Things you did, things you said. This is going to be harder and harder for people. But as an older person, I believe he's 43, it would not have been able to tell him anything about his childhood. And I would be very surprised if it could, unless it was walking him back and knew some details through data collection from things he said when he was older.
He goes, okay. He goes, as you walk in to the house through the screen door, there's a hot tub on your right. He said, and then you walk up 3 steps, and there's a door, and then you walked in, and there's a fake door to an armory.
This is fortune cookie information. It is absolutely useless information. He's giving a map and a detailed summary account of the house. That's it. That's it.
You keep all the weapons, a metal door, and there's a cherry door that covers it. And I'm like,
Jesus told him that? Really? Come on, man.
And I'm just staring at him, and I'm like, and that's not. I said that's not enough. Like that's not enough. And he says, okay. And there's an elevator that's covered by a cherry wood door. He said, and then there's steps that go up here, and then steps that go up here. In the second deck, he said, he's going like this, like there's rooms, and each one of them are labeled with a Latin long, a grid coordinates. And when he said that, every single room in the Mcaffe house was like Tahiti, Colombia, all these different names.
Isn't that interesting? They knew all about that house, and they wanted to go over that house with him. And this happens to be the house where he heard the voice tell him to get out and was scared out of it and heard guns and bombs and shit going off that scared him into the swamp. Don't you find that interesting? And then they want to go back over that area that they know so much about and verify it with what Jesus told them. Come on, man. This is fucking angering.
And I'm like, okay. I said, tell me, and I'm starting to get mad because I'm like, who are you? Is there cameras on me? How do you know this right now? And he's like, this is what we do. And I said, well, then
this is what they do. That's what I say all the time. This is what they do. This is what they do. Now, I'm not saying that these guys were FBI. They were probably contracted to verify and validate information and tell him what was going to happen to him to make it look like God was part of this. Now, this is part of a long play.
Tell me more. Let's go. Tell me more. If you know so much about me in this situation, tell me more. He says, okay, you go up to the third deck, and you got this, he goes, you got a big office up there, a beautiful office, cherry wood everywhere. And he says, and you have a massive pirate steering wheel, ship steering wheel on the.
This is insignificant information. Why would Jesus tell anybody this? The layout of a house, and you have a picture here. That's not what God would be interested in, or Jesus, or any holy entity, right? Come on, man.
Wall. And I'm just like, I'm like, okay. I'm like, tell me more. He goes, there's boats that come up to the house. And I was in so shocked that he was able to tell me the blueprints of this house. It's
because they've been surveilling it. When you use a Zigbee system, Zigbee style systems to track people through a home, they use this same type of technology in Waco before it was in mass on everybody. They use this in Waco. It's very imperative to realize this is not magic. These are things that they hide right out in the open from people. Let's keep going here.
It wasn't enough. And I said, and I yelled at him in his face. I said, if you know so much, I said, tell me more.
And here is where the surveillance comes in, the audio surveillance of the entire area. Now they're going to freak him out and turn him into a believer. Here it is.
And that's the last time I said anything, because he said, well, he said, there's a house, there's a path that you used to walk down by yourself at night. And when he said that, it brought me back to that time where I was on that path at night with crying out for God, something out there, looking at the stars, asking for him to show up. And when he identified the path that no one else knew about, not even at the house, it was hidden behind these cattail things.
They knew about it. They knew about you talking because it's surveilled, man. It's surveilled with a technology that people can't put together and people can't understand, that picks up audio, that picks up seismic activity, that picks up everything. The trail is there, and if they see you walking it every night, imagine a red dot or whatever on a screen, walking this map every night, they're going to know a trail is there. And when it's audio surveilled and you're crying out for Jesus or God to show up in your life, this is the greatest trick in the world to play on somebody, sadly.
And the sound. When he identified that path that I walked down, that I screamed out at night, I had no choice but to believe that Jesus was walking with me on that path, that God was with me on that path.
Now, I'm not here to tell you that God wasn't with you on that path, dude, at all. But what I'm here to tell you is they are deceiving you with this.
And so when he said that, I just broke down. And so as I'm walking out, the same guy that got this download that told me everything about McAfee's house during this very dark time, he says, and oh yeah, one last thing, your case is going to get dismissed.
So Jesus told him that his case was going to get dismissed after these guys grill him about the house that he was staying in with John McAfee. And they're trying to get information that Jesus told them about a house. And then they tell him that his case is going to get dropped. Now, watch what happens.
He said, checkmate, Jimmy. All I got is checkmate for you. And I said, what does this checkmate mean? He said, haven't you ever played chess? He says, it just means your case is going to dismiss. And so I go home, and my lawyer calls me, and the first...
So they knew that the lawyer probably talked like this with everybody, because lawyers and doctors do that. They have lines that they give everybody. And this lawyer probably gave everybody this line when things were going good, and they knew that. So look what happens.
First thing my lawyer says when I go back on house arrest is he says, Jimmy, he goes, I hope you're sitting down. And I said, what? Because I'm always getting bad news. I'm always used to bad news. I was like, what? And he said, checkmate. He says, haven't you ever played chess, Jimmy? He said, it means you won. Or it means your case is getting dismissed.
So what happened there? What happened was there was probably a problem, and they couldn't have him testify. They wanted McAfee. They wanted him to, for a reason. After they arrested him, they realized that it would be a problem to have him testify about something or talk about something or be convicted of something. They wanted to pin it on McAfee, or there was another reason, but they didn't want to prosecute him anymore. So they brought him to this vet program where Jesus talks to you and verified some information and then decided that his case was going to be closed and told him that Jesus said that his case was going to be closed. Do you see what is going on here? From the very beginning, the whole time they are talking about the same place that he was scared out of with the boys, where he was hearing bombs and guns going off. And now he is being swindled into believing something that isn't real. Now, then God starts talking to him and telling him that he's going to be a lighthouse to people. Very strange.
And God told me I'd be a lighthouse to his people.
You became a believer.
I have no choice but to believe.
Okay, dude, and I'm not dogging on you, but God doesn't talk to people. And if you go through my channel, man, there's enough information to fully understand this and how it works. This is a very deceptive game that they are playing here.
And, I tried to buy a lighthouse once for Mcaffe. He wanted a lighthouse. And I said, why? Why do you want a lighthouse? And he said, because it's the safest place in the world. Well, I found out over a year period when I was trying to buy this lighthouse for John Mcaffe that you can't buy one. Maybe if you're Elon Musk, of course, you can buy one. But you can't buy a lighthouse. They're on federal property. They're taken care of. Very, very difficult to buy a lighthouse. A nice one. And something that was told to me by God himself, man, when I was out there. He said, you're going to be a lighthouse to my people. I heard that. I literally heard that.
Now, let's be very honest. That's not God talking to him. That's a voice talking to him. And it tells him typical fortune cookie metaphor shit. It says you're going to be a lighthouse unto my people. Now, he just learned, studying lighthouses for John Mcaffe, that lighthouses are on federal property. They are federal land. They are owned by the government. You are going to be an owned by the government thing for the people. That's literally what the voice is kind of telling him in a strange metaphoric way, because everything that these people hear are all strange metaphors or fortune cookie style messages. They have no real meaning. It's to mess with your mind, and that's exactly what they're doing.
And he said, and I said, well, what do lighthouses do? Because I was like, this is a new revelation. It's just like that guy.
So God is talking to him again afterward and telling him about lighthouses. Very important.
Paul Lavelle said Jesus was going to tell me what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I said, what does a lighthouse do? I'm going to go Google that. And I wrote down lighthouse in my little notebook. And he said, why would you Google that? Just ask me.
Why would you Google that? Just ask me. I'm God. Why would you Google that? God is literally talking to him and telling him this. It's very frustrating when you know as much as I do about these systems and this weapon and how it works and what they began doing to people a long, long time ago. It has ruined many lives. It's never for good. And it's very important to understand this case, because this Jimmy case here, like I said earlier, it covers everything that I have ever talked about.
And I said, well, what does a lighthouse do, God? And I literally heard, you know all about lighthouses.
And he does know all about lighthouses because he looked him up for John Mcaffe, and they already knew that. So then they began messing with his mind with these fortune cookie-like messages that they send to people.
And the first thing I remember about lighthouses were they weren't for sale. And he said, neither is my word.
Yeah, neither is my word. It's not for sale. Right? There are tricks. Like when they tell somebody, you're going to die. Somebody goes, oh my God, I'm going to die. This voice told me I'm going to die. You are going to die. Everybody's going to die. Or they'll say, we're poisoning you. You know, that can mean anything, dude. It can really mean anything. When people drink alcohol, they are poisoning themselves. Radio frequency can poison you. You can have radiation poisoning. When this happens to people, generally their inner ear is fucked up. They may have felt dizzy or weird and wondered what it was. And then this voice tells you that you're being poisoned. So, you know, they use these crazy metaphors on people. And in this one, it's the Jesus trip that they're taking him on. Sometimes it's aliens, demons, ghosts, a myriad of things. But this time it's the God op on an ex-soldier, a vet. They do this a lot with people. They don't want these trained people, so they're at least going to track them, if not get rid of them. Convincing people that ghosts are following them, which they've done to a lot of people, will get rid of them right quick. Usually they die of suicide or something very similar. A lot of these vets talk about how most of their peers have committed suicide. So all of this is always told to people over and over. It's not an original story, but it's almost everything that I've ever talked about rolled up into one story. And the crazy part is that it involves John Mcaffe, what they were doing with John Mcaffe before that, and monitoring that area with this technology. Now it's gone global. But interesting case. Now I'm going to link to all those videos I talked about before below. But remember, I'm not trying to dog on you at all. I'm trying to get you to see clearly. I'm not trying to take away your religion. They had a reason for bringing you into the fold that way. And they had a reason for dropping the case. And they wanted to use this in a way that would benefit them one way or another. And get you to stop behaving the way you were. Because you would have been a liability had you been still behaving the way you were. Pay attention to what is happening. That's it for now. Look out for Charlie.